fund injustice. Just to read it to give you an understanding on what it really entails. The divisive controversy over the proposed housing fund and related levy rages on. While the top leadership are convinced that it is an excellent idea, the ordinary Kenyans are not buying it. While the leaders deny that it is a tax, the attempted explanations only confirm that it is indeed just that. The public resentment is understandable. The times are hard, with the cost of living spiraling, but Kenyans continue to be heavily taxed. A case of when things change, the more they become same, perhaps. The levy to enable more Kenyans to own their own houses is morphing into something akin to the obnoxious colonial hard tax. After contributing to the fund for 7 years, there will be no refund to those who won't get a house. They therefore risk losing their savings. And after the cap on deductions are removed, a flat rate of 1.5%, down from 3%, will be deducted from workers' salaries, with employers required to match the amount. To rub salt into the wound, there will be no freedom of choice. Even those who already own homes must have their salaries slashed for it, yet there is no guarantee of getting a house. The scheme is also discriminative. It is those in informal employment who have a payslip who will bear the brunt of the deductions, notwithstanding that the money collected will not be enough to purchase even a modest 3 million shillings house. Some top politicians, including senators, argue that it is about pooling resources as security so that developers can put up houses. But taxing employers for the program is imposing a needless burden on them as they also struggle to stay afloat. The consequence is a freeze on job creation and pay rises. As some experts have warned, there is a huge risk of the fund becoming a scandal of monumental proportions. Parliament, which is discussing the Finance Bill 2023, should not legalize an injustice. Instead, the government should make mortgages more widely affordable and facilitate the construction industry. This is possible, for example, through tax waivers and concessions for private developers who source materials locally, boost the local industry, and without inflicting pain on the people. So this is the housing tax as it is right now. No housing levy refunds in revised route to tax. That was what was headlining the front page of a Business Daily yesterday. And that's a puzzle, as we can see Ozone has drawn here, of the housing fund. Bill O'Carroll, you can actually talk about it right now.
No, there's another part in the standard. Eh?
Yes.
Let me get it. I think the standard, which actually addresses that. And give me a second.
The standard is up next as well.
There was this gentleman, the fellow I was mentioning earlier on. It's always also on the editorial.
That is Mokua?
Yes.
That is on page 16.
Got it?
Page 16?
Page 16.
Page 14, actually.
He goes further and says, which actually resonates. He says, it's time to punish readers who lie in the name of politics. So that's what is coming from the nation. And this guy is saying what we should do.
To punish them?
Yes. Because they're actually lying in the name of politics. And I have 3 of them here, so I'll be very careful what I say.
You know that they say... We have retired.
Bill retired.
That was in the right church.
I'm a businessman now.
And they say, when you make that statement, they tell Kenya, that is siyasa.
Yeah. Later.
Yes,
Things go wrong, that's what they say.
Yeah, that's siyasa.
I think this issue is something that has been, we've argued for the last 1 month. And we have said the same things that you hear the papers are making, that look, if the government is really concerned about housing, create an environment, a conducive environment for private sector to develop the houses. They will, the low-cost houses. Give them the land that you promised, give them tax incentives, and they will do that. So it's not really in the ambit of business of government to start building houses.
Absolutely.
I mean, you know how inefficient government is, and you'd expect government to, and we have not been very successful in many of our similar funds. If you know how many funds are there in this country, even the simple ones like NHIF and NSSF, how successful have they been? We thought by now we would have our own social security for people who are not employed, given the amount of money that goes to NSSF. You would think that there will be a universal health cover for every Kenyan, given the kind of money that goes to NHIF. But they're all on all the time. They're all in a difficult financial situation because of the mismanagement. So I think this thing is completely misplaced. And again, if you are saying this, you want Kenyans to contribute to help with other ones. You're only targeting Kenyans who are salaried, which are about 2-3 million. There are thousands of others who are in businesses who have with probably better terms, better income than some of these employees. And the employees are already subjected to so many other taxes, and then you're adding this, your disposable income becomes low. But the fundamental point is that this is not right for the government to do the whole issue of housing, really. One, it's not a priority in my view, that I have argued many times. People are looking for jobs, people are looking for incomes. But if at all it is, then this is not the way to do it. You can leave it to the private sector and you provide the conducive environment, tax incentives and all those things that you can do, so that people can put up those houses. Yeah.
Well, Justice Sako, do you consider it to be a scam of a
No, I don't think it's
proportion?
a scam. It might end up, as many other things, not being properly used, but I don't think it's a scam by design.
But could we begin maybe where Huduma number went?
But no, asking me the question, have there been any scams in government? Of course there have been scams in government. But
why would you send this money to Treasury? Why do you make it tax?
Yeah,
you're making it worse.
One thing I can say, and I think Bilo will agree with me, he's worked a lot on these economic areas, that around the world, one sector that is used normally as a big injection of resources in the economy is the housing sector, among the infrastructure ones. And countries like China have done this on a huge scale. Countries like India are moving along, they're not yet at that point. Now, does it have all to be government money? No, it doesn't have to be. If you can get loan products for which, or PPP arrangements for which the private sector too can get involved in. But you can't doubt that there is need for improved quality. It doesn't mean it will compare to anything that you have in Lavington or someplace. No, but you want improved shelter. People should not be in paper cardboards or be living over sewerage and so on. I mean, there are certain minimums that you shouldn't accept. And I think we shouldn't have flying toilets and things like that. There are certain minimums we must invest in. And the government has to lead the way. But what is lacking in this is what is expected from point A to point B clearly laid out. And now government has a chance to come out clear, because in another year or two they may come back with this in other forms and so on. But I don't think it's a scam. A design by scam it means it's designed and thought through. I don't think it is that.
It's been a moving thing all through. You cannot pin down the government what exactly they want.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been changing every
It's
day.
been changing.
That's true.
So the reason, what I failed to understand, if it was a 3.5%, it actually qualified to be a contribution. Now it is a 1.5, it qualifies to be a tax. I don't get any rhyme or reason for this.
Either way, but I think they have just come to that understanding.
I think the question had been raised in the public domain. If the government collects money from you today, 7 years down the road, if you don't get a house, will it really have the money to refund when you know government can't refund taxes? And this is where they have said no. Let's make it a tax. The question of refund is out. That makes it easy for them to
And you're not really guaranteed to,
Right.
to own a house.
I don't think we are saying, and this is what needs perhaps we to interrogate more. We are not saying it's a bad idea. No. Particularly the young ones who want to come up. And I do recall the first thing my father told me, make sure you have your own house. That's important, but not wholesale. There are people who don't need it right now. The second point we need to bring very clearly, and Adam Smith said, government has no business doing business. Thatcher, supply economics and legal, they brought it very strongly. Let it go be what be the saying, and I do agree with Bill. The private sector have the capacity, have the knowledge to do it. But we must come in as a country. When the government now comes in, I must provide certain platform in terms of incentives. Because one thing you look in this country, the cost of land. It's overpriced land. How do we come in terms of providing that platform so that the private sector can kick in? Fourthly and thirdly, if I was to step back, even look, if I was in a government, and I was listening to this lady in Addis, I must add, beautiful lady in Addis, and she worked for the investment.
Comes out in bits.
They work in the investment, and they have their priorities. So she said the first priority is food, and food which is nutritious.
Right.
Their second investment is manufacturing.
Right.
And I asked her, why those two? You know what she said? It brings more growth. Food, we are avoiding things more worse called food riots. If I was in terms of my tick of priorities, perhaps affordable, but very targeted, affordable housing will be the last on the list. There are areas, if I can produce, if I can manufacture, I can buy a house. So, as much as it's good for the young ones and the president, but then he was in a very nice outfit yesterday. He looked like this, some of these homeboys, a black t-shirt and Kauda suit. Very good at her. He is right. Let's give the young man opportunity to own a home. But not everyone. But even as we give them that opportunity, taxing them is not the right way to go about it. That would be my takeaway.
Okay. Mine is the bill is housing, particularly affordable housing, a priority. In my view, it is. If you look at the deplorable conditions in which some Kenyans live, including slum areas, but not only. Secondly, should government be involved in this space? In my view, yes, to an extent, but in a measured manner. To that extent, personally, I have no qualms. Where I have problems is when we make this mandatory. And in as much as the committee tried to panel beat, I find very little explanation and justification. And agree with the professor in terms of prioritizing agriculture as well as manufacturing, because that way you create opportunity for production. The construction sector, but where the affordable housing falls, is one way, of course, to grow also the manufacturing sector, because they'll need to consume some of the things that are produced. But maybe the ball in this regard, perhaps we should revisit what I remember Mzee Manu Chandaria earlier on trying to push through President Kibaki at the time. I think it falls in our Article 203(1)(a) of the Constitution, the Kenyan Sovereign Wealth Fund. Perhaps it's time we need to start thinking of that as one of the ways of saving, because there are a number of high net worth Kenyans with lots of resources outside. I did mention, for example, we are told, although there are no hard figures, that diasporas only bring 5 to 10% of what they could bring into the country. If we had that sovereign wealth fund, and we've been talking about sovereignty here, maybe it's time that I don't think the crafters of the Constitution put this article in our Constitution for no reason. Why have we not created this wealth? And of course, we're just talking about high net worths and diasporas, but of course, there are other wealths Kenya has in terms of the blue economy, underground, the carbon credits. So maybe this is a time that we need also to be thinking outside the box. But if you allow me to continue in that regard, this important solution that the diaspora would bring. I was privileged, Professor is talking about Ethiopia. About 10 years ago, I was part of a group that evolved Ethiopia's investment incentive scheme for diaspora to invest in technology in Ethiopia. The BAL yesterday, a senior World Bank official at this meeting in Nairobi, although I think he was talking for himself, maybe not necessarily for the bank, he was giving a formula where from migrants and diasporas, an additional $100 billion would be collected. If I was to quote him, he did say, if we just improve the environment in which diasporas, both in host countries and in source countries where they come from, could invest, $60 billion would be unlocked. He went further to say that if we worked on undocumented diasporas, give them an avenue. We decriminalized sending money. This is another area where I agree with President Ruto when he said, when we make it so difficult to send 1 million shillings, which has lost value over time, maybe we should consider moving that to 5 million shillings. I couldn't agree with him more. I don't know what we are waiting to bring that to Parliament so that we make it easy for money to move. I do know that there's talk of anti-money laundering and so on, counter-terrorism, but some of these are tools in a way that have been used, in my view, and in the view of many others, to stifle growth and economic growth in the developing world. Why do I say that? In the UK, you can send 200 sterling pounds without being asked for your ID and all this. In Canada, you can send up to 999 Canadian dollars, even without an ID. But in Kenya, just even sending 10 shillings, you must produce an ID and so on. So I think, and I'm glad that even at the UN level, there's what's called the Global Compact on Migration. The objective 19 and 20, one of it recognizes that the overbearing regulation that we have is not healthy to the economy. We are saying let source be identified, let it be a credible source of money, but I think we overregulate. So those are areas we need to look at. Equally, we should also look at legitimizing what we call undocumented diasporas. They would be then more useful to their destination, their hosts, as well as their source countries. He does reason that in that manner, 60 billion, 20 billion, and another 20 billion, giving us 100 billion that could be made available for development, particularly in the developing countries.
So let me just gravitate to the issue of fuel a bit and ask the question, the 0.03 revision on the fuel price right now. Are we seeing just a blip also on this particular front to cushion and maybe mollify and pacify wananchi with the 0.03? What discernible difference does it make? I've never seen an up of 0.03. I always see on the percentile of 1 to 2, right, so to speak.
Yeah.
But 0.03, Vilokero?
No, yeah, that is very cosmetic. When you look at the way the petroleum prices have changed in the last couple of months, we would have expected that the figure would have gone down significantly. But I think the reality is that the government was removing the subsidies gradually. And so we did not benefit from the significant decline in the prices of petroleum. Even now, I'm sure with huge amounts of subsidies still outstanding, in excess of 45 billion, I don't think the government has really come out clearly on why the reduction has been so minimal. It's 0.something of cents. Which will not have any significant impact.
Right.
But it's a PR thing, it works for the optics. The government has brought down the petroleum prices. But the fact remains that 2 weeks from now, when the new bill is signed into law, probably by tonight it will be signed into law if the parliament passes it. They won't waste time on it. They'll sign it into law.
If it's not already signed.
It will kick in 2 weeks' time. So an 8% increase on 184 shillings, you'll probably be short of 200. You'll just be for petroleum is about 200 shillings, almost a liter. So I think so. This is not something to write home about. The changes they announced yesterday in the prices.
A quick one, Debal. Housing has dominated our discussion today a lot. I have one more thing to say, very quick one.
Yes.
We talk about affordable housing, but in this continuum of housing types, there's also something called social housing, which is a notch lower than affordable housing. The kind of thing you provide because it's needed to raise the basic minimum, and it may accommodate people who can't even afford much cost towards that social housing, and is subsidized by the state. There are some gains, of course, in their construction. I think that we should put a lot of emphasis on social housing, and then some on affordable housing, but there is a need for the entire spectrum of housing to be developed, who does it, of course, what is going to vary. My last parting shot on that,
Yeah.
we need a new sessional paper on housing. So there is a robust debate outside of specific interventions.
True.
So that we agree in the direction that we are going in. Lastly, away from housing now, I think commentators, economists, others, particularly others also, should begin to think about what kind of society we are constructing. You know, budgets and these cost centers, taxes, begin to shift the allocation of resources and how people act. Which way is it going to shift towards? Personally, I'm very keen on this because in doing our next long-term vision, we have somehow to imagine what kind of Kenya it would be. And Kenya is going to be a product of these decisions that we are making as well. Of course, they will change over time and decisions change. But I think it's important to say, so what does it imply? A lack of subsidy or adequate subsidy in petroleum or in other aspects of our society. What kind of resource allocation outcomes can we expect? So let us discuss it. Now, there are very many people who will have an appreciation if we get out of jargon. Many people can contribute to that.
Right, thank you. I wanted just to, we have the weekly review that was in this past Senate Nation is talking about the cooking oil millionaires. And the sub-headline reads that is this multi-billion shilling edible oil imports program the new gold mine for Kenya's elites? While shelf prices have slightly dropped since the duty-free scheme was introduced, middlemen in Dubai are making a killing as the link between KNTC and manufacturers in Malaysia. And just to get just a brief snippet of where the story is, we have there on page 5, rent seeking, it says, behavior by well-connected traders, an oily mess, according to the according to the import entry documents for 3 consignment of the 20-liter jerrycan of cooking oil that landed in Mombasa on May 17th. The landed cost is stated at $26 per jerrycan. And also we have president of Cairo-based Pan-African trade finance provider, Afrexim Bank, Benedict Orama, said the institution will support a plan to convert KNTC into Kenya's export trading agency. He signed $3 billion deal with Kenya. We have Dubai Farm, which made massive margins because the prevailing, it says here the Dubai Farm made massive margins because the prevailing international prices quoted daily on the commodity exchanges shows that the landing price of a 20-liter jerrycan of cooking oil is $19. Kenya has a vibrant edible oil processing industry made up of 13 players with a combined installed capacity of processing 2.1 million tons of crude palm oil per year. The factories are currently estimated to be operating at 40% capacity. He said the nouveau riche of the duty-free cooking oil imports game are making tidy margins. The Dubai Farm made a cool $595,840 in profit from 3 consignments. Trade investment and industry CS Moses Kuria recently unleashed acrimonious attacks on Kenya Association of Manufacturers for opposing duty-free imports of cooking oil. He spoke of the existence of a 5-member cartel that was dictating high consumer prices for edible oil. Billionaires at stake because the government has tasked KNTC to import 125,000 tons of cooking oil to reduce domestic consumer prices by 30%. Bilokero, is this an oily mess, according to your own?
You know this thing, I read the story.
You did.
But it's the duplicity, of this government, that in one hand we are saying we should raise taxes, we should raise revenue, and they condemned the previous government for granting waivers on tax. But on the other hand, they are doing the same thing, granting waivers illegally. If you get the time to go through what's going on at KNTC, it's the biggest fraud that has happened in this country. And you'll see it later, it will come out. I mean, things will come out after months and years. But what is happening is that the government is unlawfully granting KNTC an opportunity to allow me and you to import goods duty-free and sell it to KNTC. So people who are connected to the government, very well connected to the government, and the names will come out sooner or later because they are known, they were approved by the KNTC and Parliament has the list. Those people have been given the opportunity to import the sugar, the cooking oil and all those things at a very low price on the international market, but sell at a ridiculously high price on to the KNTC.
Yeah.
Example is the oil. You've seen there. They import a jerrycan at $19 a jerrycan, but selling to KNTC at $26. That means they're making $7 on the jerrycan. That's almost 800-900 shillings. Today, as we speak, KNTC is stuck, similar to what happened in Kemsa, with huge quantities of very expensive cooking oil they are unable to offload. Because cooking oil is an internationally traded commodity. So when the prices have gone down, the CPO, the crude which is imported by the manufacturer, also goes down. And so the prices have been on downtrend, and they've gone down really. So these guys, because of this rent-seeking of $7, and they're only exempted from duty. They're supposed to pay VAT. KNTC is not a super organization that is exempt from VAT. It's supposed to charge VAT. If they charge VAT and sell to the distributors with VAT, KNTC is going to, read my words, KNTC is going to lose not short of 10 billion shillings if they import the 125,000 metric tons. And KRA will lose an equivalent amount of almost 10 billion in taxes. Duty, IDF, RDLs, all those taxes that they're supposed to collect, which they're not paying. So it's a fraud, and the government knows, and they're being protected up to the highest level. So all this story about, trying to undermine the manufacturers is in order to give those importers a chance to bring these things and make them quick back. And this, I was shocked actually when I saw the president on the interview, that State House interview a couple of weeks ago.
Yes.
Saying live on national TV that all these manufacturers, they are not manufacturing, they're just repackaging and branding. I mean, how would you say that when people have invested, those 13 companies have invested over 100 billion in manufacturing, and from that crude oil is where the soap is coming from, all the soap manufacturers, all the fat manufacturers, and the government has an institution to know. I mean, these things are inspected. Crude, when it's imported, there's SGS, there's KEBS, there's KRA. So when you go on national TV to try and malign companies, at the same time you're saying you're supporting manufacturing, they're actually killing manufacturing. So this is just one example, but do you talk about the sugar manufacturers? With the way the imports are coming in duty-free, you import sugar duty-free, and then it's retailing for 10,000, 12,000 a bag. So there's a whole scam about KNTC where the president's men, and I want to use that word, people connected to the government are the ones who are importing this thing. It's not me and you. You will not get it. But this is wrong. This is wrong. This is absolute madness. What the government is doing is absolute killing manufacturing. At the expense of individuals, you want them to have money. This is wrong. As a manufacturer of cooking oil, Kenya's Association of Manufacturers has written half a dozen times to the government, including the CS, including the president, come and visit our factories. If in fact we are just branding, come and see. You have the lives of 100,000 people working in that whole ecosystem of cooking oil who will be affected.
So that issue of branding is just a truck of excuse to try
to justify this import.
And it's the same story. You play out the big four. If you look at the big four during the Jubilee government, manufacturing was one of the key things they wanted to get in. The Kwanzaa is the second one. If you look at the performance of that at the Jubilee, it's still, we are now actually at 7.1% contribution to the GDP. It used to be 13%. So it's really going down. And the reason is what he is explaining. I'm saying I want people to and how do you produce, how do you export when you allow imports to come? And I go back to the same statement. I'm sorry, I keep saying it, and I should not be sorry. Unlike the brain, the stomach allows you when it's empty. The brain doesn't alert you when it's empty.
Maybe that's why we are not thinking
You
too
know,
well.
you can't. It doesn't make sense, as Bill is saying.
So, but,
Here
this
we
is-
are.
but if you have some influential people in the upper reaches of government who they have the mentality of rent seeking, what do you expect?
Then let them not lie to us.
So truly, when we had this former CJ saying this is a bandit economy, is this one of the hallmark of a bandit economy? Bunyasi Sakwa?
I think
I think they are more than banditry. You know, banditry comes with a gun. I think they are a step higher, more clever.
People have a knack for getting some catchwords, and there's no end to those. Huh? They sort of dramatize something enough for it to sort of be driven home. This is what I want to say. The behavior that is being explained, what Bilo has explained and Prof is adding to it, around rent-seeking behavior, for example, within the KNTC, it was the same earlier in Kenatco in different ways also. That was not manufacturing, that was just a service provider. Is typical of systems that instead of a Trojan protection. What could have happened, in my view, even if you gave this responsibility to KNTC, KNTC would have been an organ that seeks to get a competitive offers of imports from people competent to do so after determining what the shortfalls are. We have a huge shortfall in the edible oils sector. And even down when I'm in Busia, people are aware that there is a huge import bill for Kenya in edible oils. And they say, we Busia can produce edible oils, let us get into it. People are expected to get into this thing because there's an opportunity. If you mess it up by allowing the rent seeking that is being described, then what's going to happen? That instead of filling the gap, you're actually undermining even the limited capacity that there was. And I don't think that to say that some manufacturers are simply repackaging and so on, it's not entirely untrue, but it's not a depiction of the whole situation. No, it isn't. The other day, it was in the news in respect of sugar, that on Lunga Road, somewhere in this complex near where we are, the police stumbled onto a process of repackaging into non-brands.
Fertilizers.
Yes.
It was fertilizer.
Fertilizer, but sugar was also one of those.
All of them from KNTC, marked KNTC. All of them.
All of them.
They marked from
Of course, they're all from KNTC.
Yeah, but what happened? What happened? Say with let me talk about sugar, for example, as an example. You mark it to Mumias, and Mumias has not been producing sugar on the market, really.
Yeah.
They know exactly what has happened. We would expect even these police authorities to, within the existing laws and existing norms, to crack down on that. And it's now off the headlines, which is quite sad.
Yeah, because even I used to question myself, with all due regard to the brand of Naivas, I'm not trying to castigate it, but I used to wonder how then are they also involved in manufacturing of sugar? I mean, the packaging that you're talking about. So we have all these imports, and then the problem of having a genuine company that has been producing this, or it is deemed that it's coming from Mias or from Naivas. We never question.
No, you see,
Maybe I failed to understand. Maybe I need.
I can
to mind
clarify.
you
You see,
where from so that you can
manufacturers
clarify,
like
yeah.
sugar, there is a manufacturer and there are people who are distributors. So if you buy now as a manufacturer, from manufacturer, for example, you buy Mumias, it comes in Mumias bags.
Okay.
If you are a supermarket or a small distributor or a mini mart somewhere, you want to repackage it into your own brand.
Okay. Okay.
So you create your own peppers and you package it and then sell it. The same thing with people who can buy from the manufacturers of cooking oil and they rebrand it for themselves.
Okay.
But the actual manufacturers, the question of Mumias came to light because Mumias was shut down. And here you are, you see in the sugar, branded, the packages are 2 kilograms are marketed in Mumias, and then the supermarket. So the question was, this company is shut down. So where is this sugar coming from? Well, maybe there are some people who bought bulk before and had it in their distribution, maybe, but the explanation didn't come out.
No.
It's blatant.
There are many important points here which we shouldn't lose. For me, the first one, Afri-Exim is mentioned. Afri-Exim Bank, the African Export-Import Bank in Cairo, an AU organ which is meant to promote exports out of Africa. I think we aren't addressing that aspect, which is important. If Afrexim was to play a role to revitalize KNTC, to be a vehicle for export, I think that's something that we shouldn't lose in the negatives. Secondly, KNTC, probably like Post, is one asset that is being wasted. It's a huge asset. The world is moving towards e-commerce, online shopping, and so on. In that value chain, the supply chain, KNTC, post office, and so would be so critical. I remember in this ongoing meeting, there's talk of, at the end of the day, people want to receive cash, even when you send money to the village. One good outlet would have been the post office. So for me, idle assets like KNTC and post office and the like, if KNTC was to be the beginning point to establish a Kenya export-import bank as an agency, so be it. I think the bigger problem is we have good grand ideas, they are wrongly implemented. In fact, we tend to also vilify brokers. You know, we criminalize as like middlemen, middlewomen is bad. The principle of middlemen and women, sometimes they're the enablers. It's the manner in which it's done and people close to the state coming in, which is bad. But having middlemen that are legitimate and regulated is not bad. Finally, a point I want to make. In a place like the UK and I believe like the US, there's what we call finder's fee. That is very normal to find, even if there's a tender contract. Somebody can find a company to bid, you introduce them, you have agreed fees, it's on the table, not under the table, which is very much legitimate. In Kenya, if one tries to do that, that's corruption. So I think we must find a way to completely have a mindset shift so that above all else, things are done on the table, it's clear, you can bring your company, you can be a middleman or woman, but play by the rules. I think it's only the bad habit if we allow people close to the state doing it, which is wrong. I think we need to be clear on that.
Gichero, you wanted to comment on that as well? Before
I think I did.
You did. We can, you know, as we remain with 10 minutes, look at NHIF and the cancelling of a tender after we had an expose.
And you see a lot of them happening.
Yes.
Yeah.
And what has been happening to the NHIF as we're just finalizing right now, no funds at all. People in Mashinani are being affected. Only the civil servants seem to be benefiting from NHIF. I've never understood, because even during when we had COVID, people were turned away that the civil servants are given priority. And everyone really pays NHIF contributions deducted from it. Wasn't that even discriminatory? But I'm mixing issues. Let's go on the tender issue first, on the cancellation of it after the expose, because we're talking about rent seeking, and this is primarily huge when it comes to tendering process.
My contribution to that is that it's a rot, and sometimes the best way to treat a rot is to cut it out. I think that the people in NHIF, I think that's the institution where one receptionist used to fly in a helicopter from some place within outside of Nairobi, to work. People can use their resources any way they like, but it clearly indicates something is not right. I think that's an institution that is hiding a lot of rot. It must be looked into with great care and with great ruthlessness to get it to operate efficiently. They're using funds extracted from the public on the basis of trust that I'll pay and I'll get this service. In many places, the only advantage you can get from NHIF, if at all, is the bed. And the rest of it, there's such a category of people who can get surgery onto it, and certain hospitals who do get huge benefits as well. So this issue of messing up with tenders it's a tip of the iceberg, a little tip of the iceberg of what goes on. It needs to be looked into, in depth. It wasn't just KEMSA in messing up tender documents.
Yes.
And NHIF is doing exactly the same thing. They've been notorious at it. I don't think we should let it pass. There's too much money extracted from the public in expectation of certain benefits that don't come. I think the government, President Ruto, to help him meet his goals in terms of releasing resources that are for development, should get the NHIFs of this day to operate with great transparency and in ways that would meet the audit standard, even our own audit standard. I think it's a shame.
My take here is that we probably need to interrogate why are they being cancelled. And KEMSA was the first one to come in. You get this young fella who was a PS coming and saying, "I'll clean it up." I've always wondered about that word, "I'll clean it up."
Don't believe it.
Yeah, don't shout, do it, and then you see the difference. The board comes in and clears it. Now we have this. The other's going to fall. And the question you ask yourself, well, the people who had tendered, were they the right people? Really?
But the question again is, I think you have all this entire process also being approved, especially for when you talk about 7 billion shillings. Where is the public procurement authority? Because they are the people also who are mandated to scrutinize some of these tenders.
Right.
So the cancellation comes after the expose, not really done by public or procurement authority, but by a media house. That is really telling also of what the authorities do.
Congratulations.
Ideally, and I suppose my colleagues have been involved and have been involved. Ideally, when a tender comes, they go through a process, right? Shem has applied, Bill has applied, Meshme has applied. As a CEO, you actually get a committee to go through that. You disoriented yourself. Mongoso very clear. And I know you are free about Mongoso. So the Mongoso says the CEO should dissociate himself from that. So you appoint somebody. They go the process and say, Shem, technically, is qualified. The others, maybe they are not. Maybe Mweshmia is not technically. We go now to the financial. It's good. We add the both. Our pass mark is 70 or 75. The tender goes to Shem. Unless now you're telling we don't like Shem, then we cancel all of them. In some kind of thing, it could be the case. There are certain people who say, did you apply for that tender? Did you apply for that tender? Then none of us is there. What's the best way to go? Cancel it. But there are costs involved. And I was talking with Hannes, and I need to catch up with him. He said, there was this thing out about the intelligent lights, street lights. And it was said in the public domain, apply, you have to pay this amount. Then after you have applied, they say, no, only firms from South Korea should apply. But you've already paid for all that. And then he was asking, Hennis, some South Africa was asking, is it a way of raising money within your government? I told him, I don't know. So you really, if the process is great, it doesn't matter who has applied for it. Because if we don't have the technical capacity and the financial, at that stage we can say we have cancelled the tender. They were not responsive. Period.
Thank you. Right, Bill?
Yeah, this is not the only one. I've been reading in the last few weeks on Kenya Power.
That was cancelled as well.
KEBS, then the KEMSA one, the port, Kenya Ports Authority. I mean, it's been the practice always that when the tender sum is huge, the interests, also invested interests are many in government. And there are different levels of government in high places. So these are not ordinary folks, me and you fighting over that 7 billion and amending those contracts. Quite often it is, a power play within the executives, top branch. But I think it's unfortunate that, it's a new government, and with all the challenges we have, you don't expect these things to happen. But nothing much has changed in terms of the issues of governance.
Now the cartoon is the standard of the DO and whatever.
So it's, but the thing is, just about 3-4 days ago, before the CS Health announced that the Treasury has now released money for NHIF was on a stretcher.
Yes.
It was literally insolvent. They are unable to pay. The capitation for hospitals, people have submitted claims. Many of the hospitals have cancelled any medical services to civil servants and others who have got NHIF cards. It's a shame, because this organization collects billions every month. In a year they collected, last year it was over 80 billion shillings. You know, and then you have that, you know, and it's not clear what happened. You know, there are all these things in social media. The money has been moved to treasury or what, or this happened, that happened. But I think there is a need to deal. This is why we are concerned about the housing fund, any fund from the government, because of these challenges.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right, and of course we have also George Kariuki Ruku, who wants to amend the anti-corruption bill so that he's seeking to decriminalize non-compliance with procurement guidelines and engagement in unplanned public projects. And it terms them, or the bill terms them as administrative matters that are better addressed through administrative action as opposed to criminal prosecution, as is the current case. Let's wind up. Let's wind up.
For me, in all this, and we cannot forget to congratulate the new president of the Kenya Chamber of Commerce. Hopefully issues like KNTC can get involved so that it's done transparently more.
How do you compete with your deputy and he beats you?
Yeah, for private. It happens. Didn't it happen in Kenya last year? But when it comes to matters stemming graft, in my view, value system is what's lacking. Even in all this, we are talking of NHIF, KEMSA and all. For me, the administration that will change Kenya significantly, like Nyerere changed Tanzania, is the one that will introduce value systems.
Thank you. Bill Okero, your closing remarks?
No, let's wait for the
yes,
the
let's
CS
wait
this
for,
afternoon and see what.
But we said it's purely ceremonial.
It's ceremonial, yes.
So there is nothing new that
nothing new is expected,
yes.
Except in the usual story that accompanies those numbers. You know, these are the policies of the government. But that is where the governments are doing is in the case of finance, housing fund. They should have put the policy first. You know, you cannot develop things without laying out the policy. That's why there were so many questions around these things.
Thank you.
So I hope the policies they'll come up with it.
Right.
Many of the finance.
I wonder what also is at stake for Vision 2030 in this budget. You've not really told us that your office has been dedicated some tedious amount of money. On a lighter note, but your closing remarks.
We don't have any money in there. Actually, for us, for me, as the chair, what I see is really important to have a clear understanding which way we are taking the economy. What is the impact of all these measures that are being put in place? Because they have implications for what will grow, what will not grow, what will disappear, what might come in. We don't know it all, but it gives us a basis of how things are on the ground, quite apart from the rhetoric that might be going on here.
Thank you. Gituro,
I'll close it to quick one. Is the one I actually say the African proverb. Unlike the brain, the stomach at you when it's empty. And a good note is really to appreciate Faith Kipyegon.
Yes.
I think that was fantastic.
True.
Breaking 2 world records. And also the daughter. I think the daughter was hilarious. She was all over sitting on the president's chair when they went to State House. I think Faith, wherever you are, well done.
All right.
And you did great in this country.
Thank you for that penetrative insight that we've heard from you regarding the finance bill, talking broadly about it. Not really the finance bill, but a budget today where we are expecting the PS and also the CS, of course, to be on the floor of the House, not